Hello there. I am so excited to be talking with you today all about how learning to comfort your inner child is actually what you need to do in order to unlock your next level of accomplishments in pretty much any domain in life. If you hear some noise over here, Pepper, my cat, has decided that this is the perfect time to try to get treats out of her puzzle box. Hi, Dorothea. Good to see you. So anyway, that's if there's noise over there, that's probably what you are hearing is my cat trying to get treats out of a puzzle box. So, yes, what we're going to talk all about today, just to repeat for those of you who are joining now. Hi, Sirius O'Nally. I'm not sure how to Sonali. Good to see you. But yeah, today we're going to be talking all about how comforting your inner child is actually what you need to do in order to get to the next level of accomplishments in your life. And to start us off, I'm going to actually tell a little bit of a story. I'm going to tell a story of a lesson that I taught when I was um, a violin teacher. I'm trying to place exactly how long ago this was. Probably 10 or maybe a little over 10 years ago at this point. Maybe some of you know that I was a violin teacher in the past. Um, so I had at least, I think, like 5 years or so where I was doing violin teaching pretty regularly. And there was a situation that happened with a student that really was the hyper beginning of having my eyes open to how important it is to comfort the parts of ourselves that are scared. And it's not uncommon for children to get scared in new situations. That was actually like the very beginning of me learning about all of this was I was introduced to a couple of books all about parenting actually when I was a new violin teacher. And that kind of began my journey. I know reparenting, the concept of reparenting has become extremely popular in the world now. And if you, like, I guess a pro tip is that if you actually want to learn how to reparent yourself, read parenting books. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but gentle parenting in particular. So let me get into the story. Let's set ourselves in the actual setting. I'm trying to get a pen over here and I'm knocking shit over. So the actual setting was a little community music school in Colorado. I am assigned students, like whoever signs up for the music school is basically who I'm getting as a student. And there was this young girl, I've decided to call her Leah. I don't actually remember what her name is, but Leah was, let's say, 3 years old, 4 years old. And she came with her dad, like her dad brought her to lessons, and she was learning how to play violin like for the very first time. And for those of you who don't know, violin is a pretty complex, like, physical thing to do, especially for children. Like, there's this thing in child development where, like, there's the midline of your body, and activities that have to, like, cross over the midline of your body are really challenging to do, especially when you're super young. And actually, that's why some people love to put their kids in violin lessons, is because, like, essentially, like, forcing yourself to develop this ability to, like, cross the midline of your body and do things on one side of your body, um, is something that is, like, massively amazing for brain development. So, but I digress. So this little girl was in the community music school. She was learning how to play violin for the first time, and it is a process. This, like, another side note, like, when you are teaching children, you cannot avoid making things fun. If you want it to stick, you have to make things fun. And I know that's something that you and I talk about a lot here, which is that, like, on the path to mastery, you need to break things down into small chunks, and then you need to make them as fun as possible. And that is a universal truth for all learning across children and ultimately adults as well. So we're in the lesson, and I think we had gotten to, like, a certain point of, like, she was able to hold the violin with her like chin, and she was able to like turn her head to the side, and that was going okay. But then when it came time to learn how to hold the bow, she was really resisting, like really, really. And immediately in that lesson, like we had, I think, covered the basics of it the previous week. I can't remember the exact details. Or maybe she even had another teacher and got switched over to me. I can't remember, really remember. But for whatever reason with the bow, she was resisting so hard. She was like, "No, I don't wanna do that. No, like, this isn't for me. I don't no." You know, how three-year-olds, like, they're just like, "No," and then they, like, go over to a corner, and then they, like, decide to play with an object on the wall or something. Um, she was like, "No." And her dad hi, Jasper J. Strings, good to have you here. Um, her dad was like, "Come on, you gotta learn how to do this, like, it's not that big of a deal, like, what's the problem?" Basically, like, started to kind of get frustrated with her and yell at her in the lesson, and, like, shortening up the timeline quite a bit, obviously, because this was, like, a half-hour lesson. Um, but then I noticed, I'm like, "What would happen if we got really curious right now instead of pushing, 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 pushing?" Because the stereotypical approach is like, let's incentivize with games, let's make it even more fun. And I was trying to do all those things. Like I was trying to make practicing holding the bow, like do windshield wipers and do bunny ears. And I was like trying to do all of these things that you normally do with children to help it be more enticing and entertaining. And usually that is what like helps them stay engaged. But none of this was working. And that's why this dad was getting really frustrated, was because like, I'm sure he's like paying for this lesson. It's X amount of money. He thinks that a result has to happen in a certain amount of time. And so he's just push, push, push. And I noticed that like the pushing that I'm doing also isn't working. So then I'm like, okay, we need to like be agendaless right now. And we need to just be really curious about what's happening now. When I was just agendaless, when I allowed myself to just be right there in the moment, something in me said, ask about what she's feeling, ask about her experience. And so I got down on the floor with her because at that point she was like either sitting or like lying on the floor, basically. And I got down on the floor with her real close and I said, "Hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? Like what's happening?" And I, held the bow in my own hand so that she could kind of have the stimuli. I'm not forcing her to do it, but just showing it to her. And she immediately went like this. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh, are you scared? Are you scared?" And then she instantly started like these hot, huge tears started rolling down her face. And, when 3-year-olds cry, it just like it breaks your heart because you're like, "Oh, this is like the whole world is coming crashing down right now." And that's the thing. When our own inner 3-year-olds are experiencing this, their whole world comes crashing down as well, and that's within us. We're gonna get to that a little bit later. But back to the situation. These hot, huge tears are, like, rolling down her cheeks, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm really scared." And then I immediately just followed, like, my intuition. I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's totally normal to be scared, like, this is something really new. Isn't it weird? Isn't it so weird that we're, like, holding this stick this way?" And I just, started to do, like, weird stuff with my hand. And she was like, "Yeah, it's really weird, like, it's super scary." And then I asked her, like, "Are you not sure if you can do it? You don't know if you can do it?" And again, she was like, "Yeah." At that point, I turned to the dad and kind of look at him. His jaw is on the floor because he didn't realize that she was resisting engaging in the lesson because she was fucking terrified of this stick thing. She also was like, "I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it well." Again, I think my hunch in that moment, which turned out to be correct, was that she had already internalized that, like, she was gonna be in trouble if she didn't do, like, things the right way. I think her dad even said, like, "If you do this, we'll go out for ice cream. If you do this, we'll go out for ice cream," like, over and over and over again, and I was like, "Look, dude," in my head, I'm like, "Look, dude, this is not working. Like, you trying to butter her up with all these treats is not working because you're not with her. You're not being right there with her in that moment." So, she already had gotten this lesson that, like, when I am not able to do something that I'm supposed to do, even when I'm scared, like, that leads to bad things, and that's, like, actually kind of compounding the fear as well. So, I just sat with her and, told her, like, "Wow, it is really weird, isn't it?" And, like, "I didn't used to be able to do this. It took me a long time to learn how to do this, and it's okay if it takes you a long time. Like, this is how everybody learns, and everybody's scared." And then I started to try and get her dad to participate, and I asked him, like, "Are you scared ever?" Try to just come up with something where he would talk about, like, how he was scared of something. Um, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm definitely scared." And then I think the example he came up with is, like, that he was scared of bears or something. And so I was like, "Yeah, see, your dad's scared too." And then I think for the rest of the lesson, I had him practice doing the bow hold so that she could see that he could do it and he could mess up and like it was okay. And, she wasn't going to get in trouble for not being able to do it right away. And then I think we were able to do it once before the end of the lesson because at that point I had shed my agenda, been right there in the moment, curious, just noticing what her body wanted to do. And then through, my best guess at the empathy that's being triggered inside of me, noticing, I think she's scared. Like, and then offering that, seeing if it's a good fit. And by her, like, the emotions getting stronger and by her crying, that was kind of like the recognition that that was actually what was going on for her. Because she wasn't like, no, that's not it. And then ultimately the next thing was just, taking the time to like tell her why that makes sense, why it's totally understandable that she's feeling that way, and like looking around for other examples of her other people experiencing the same thing to so that she knows that she's not alone, that she's being connected with. And then once she felt comforted, once she felt connected, she was able to be curious enough about what it was like to do this that she was willing to try. So, there's so much in this story of working with this 3-year-old child in a violin lesson that is highly relevant to you in your life right now. Let's talk about, like, what it's like to be wanting to achieve something, okay? In my own life right now, I've got a lot of things that I'm going for, right? I'm leading Unlearn Become, this movement of highly sensitive high achievers, like basically learning how to reparent themselves and actually like take care of themselves so that they can go for the huge audacious like innovative life-changing world-changing dreams of being an artist and a leader and a politician maybe or reinventing their systems and the corporation that they work at, basically being the person who's a revolutionary, instigating change in whatever their area of the world is. These are the folks that I love to work with. And whether that looks like setting a personal revolution in your own life first, or and then like impacting the world. kind of as a ripple effect of that, like, doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you have a revolutionary spirit and you are here to do what you feel is huge, like living a huge life. And being a highly sensitive person, being a high achiever who also probably struggles with perfectionism, burnout, procrastination, all of these things require, especially for a highly sensitive person, a unique type of tender, loving care and attunement. And so, when let's say you're wanting to apply for a job, you're like, I really want to get my resume out there. I know I want to be going for like XYZ kinds of jobs. And I don't understand why I haven't been able to get myself to do this yet. Again, I'm using this silly voice because like I just make things silly. That's my personality. Make things silly that are hard, laugh at the things that are like actually kind of dark. That's my sense of humor. That isn't to downplay anything about like what you're going through if you have been in a situation like that. I know I've been terrified of taking action like a million times in my life. That's why I do what I do, is because I want to help you in the ways that I didn't receive help for so long. Anyway, so going back to the applying for a job situation, you're like, I know I want to apply for a job. I just need to put my resume out there. Like I should just be able to do it. This is such a common thing that people struggle with. So common. And let's bring it back to that violin lesson scenario. I should just be able to hold the bow, or in this case, oh, there goes my phone. Whoops, I was so passionate, and apparently my phone was like tipped over just enough that it would fall over. I'm so sorry for the Instagram people. I've got YouTube over here, so they didn't experience that, thankfully. But anyway, oh my goodness. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, bringing it back to the bow scenario where this dad was like, "You should just be able to hold the bow. Like, what's the big deal about that? That's not a big deal." This child part of us doesn't have any ability to rationalize about what should be easy or should not be easy. There's a legitimate fear is fear. Fear needs to be comforted. Fear needs to be teased apart to understand the underlying beliefs that are creating that fear. And for her, she was worried that like if she made a mistake, that she was going to get in trouble. Um, that was part of what was keeping the fear going, as well as just like this is a new thing. It's really weird. And that was part of the other part of what was keeping the fear going. So in your situation, it's not holding a bow; it's applying for jobs. What thoughts are feeding that fear cycle that need to be like teased apart or validated a little bit so that they can kind of relax and dissipate, the emotion can move through. Remember, as I was being there with her and I was starting to name accurately some of the things that she was thinking and feeling, her emotion got stronger at first. She started to cry, and that's not a bad thing. So if you are in this situation with yourself and you decide to sit down with yourself, you're like, okay, I'm really afraid of applying for this job. It doesn't make rational sense. Let me just sit with this fear for a minute, like I were sitting next to a little girl that was like 3 years old, 6 years old. Let me just sit next to it and be curious and ask like, what's going on? Like, tell me more about what you're feeling. And once you do that, you'll be able to start to make some guesses, like talking to that part of yourself and say, oh, it seems like you might be scared because of blah, blah, blah. Like you're thinking that um, no one will accept me. Like I'll apply for all these jobs and I won't get any of them. Maybe that's the underlying fear. And that sounds like really terrifying and really lonely because you like want to be part of a work environment. Um, and then so just being there with that part and listening and saying like, of course it makes sense that if you were thinking those things that you'd be really, really fucking scared. Like, of course that makes sense. And then also just acknowledging the inherent vulnerability in doing anything new. And you can even in your imagination, in your own physical body, you can do things with yourself like how you would actually do with like a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old. You can like in your imagination, you can rub them on their back or like stroke their hair, or you can even, rub your own chest or stroke your own hair as a way of like getting that kinesthetic feeling of like I'm actually taking care of the 3-year-old, the 6-year-old inside of me. And if you just sit with this in an agendaless way, I'm going to speak briefly to the part of you that might be like, I'm just supposed to sit with this? Like, how long is this going to take? What if this lasts forever? What if I feel these emotions and it's just like, this is the rest of my life? Like, I open this can of worms and I will just feel sadness and fear and grief forever. That is a very common fear, first of all. I know I felt that fear for a long time. Second of all, emotions only last for 90 seconds tops. If you do not interfere by continuing to tell yourself a shitty story, or if you don't use it as evidence of like more bad things coming in the future. Emotions take 90 seconds to pass through your mind body system. That is it. And so I know that might be hard to believe, especially if you haven't experienced this directly. And this is why it can be really valuable to work with a coach, a therapist, someone who not all therapists have the capacity really. Like, I know that this is how some of them at least are supposed to be trained, is to like be able to be with you and sit with you in these experiences, in the emotion, so that you can kind of anchor into some safety. But so it's not necessarily therapist or coach, it's versus coach. It's like, who do you feel comfortable with? Who do you feel like they're really there with you without an agenda? They're just really there to unconditionally support you in that moment. That is who I would be trying to find and choose if I were in your shoes and looking for someone to essentially co-regulate with, to learn how to feel my own feelings first. I do that for my clients. That's something that we do pretty often, is just like learn to sit with and to be with and experience your emotions. So anyway, if you find it challenging to do this when you're on your own, to be agendaless, to feel your feelings and not have this like anxiety take over, which is really just a bunch of thoughts going over and over again about like, oh my God, these emotions are going to last forever. Like, I'm never going to be able to feel anything else. That's not true. And it's also totally understandable that you feel that way. And it is possible through practicing just being with the emotion, not buying into whatever thoughts are sprouting out from the emotion, but just being right there with it. You will experience that, like, when you feel an emotion from start to finish, it only takes, like, I don't know, 90 seconds, a minute, something like that. And then there's clarity on the other side. There's spaciousness on the other side. And so back to the applying for the job situation, you feel your fear, feel your sadness, be with that part of you, comfort that part of you, just sit next to it exactly like if you were sitting next to a child who were scared of something that you knew that it was possible for them to do. You knew that someday they'll find this easy, and yet in the moment, they are just scared of what they don't know. And so after you sit with that part of you and the emotion kind of like, just like a wave, it crests and then it begins to dissipate, like the tide pulling back from shore. And then there's that calm placidness that happens right after that, that spaciousness. For me, when I experience this, it's like a spaciousness in the central column of my body. All of a sudden it feels like clear, open. Hmm. There's a lot in yogic philosophy that I could talk about that as well, but I'm not gonna get in there. Hi, Kim. Good to see you. But once you get to that place of clarity where the emotion has kind of subsided like the tide s going back from the shore, then you can begin to ask yourself new questions. Instead of pushing, 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 I should be applying for the job. I should be like taking all this action. I should be submitting my resumes to like this and this and this. You can ask yourself, like, what would be the most fun way to begin approaching this? Or what would be a way that I can help myself feel really good? Those are questions that you can ask yourself. But if you're still in the place where you're actually talking to this young version of you, you can even ask her, like, so, little Kate, like, I'm about to apply for this job. Like, I'm going to do this because it's what I want to do and it's what's going to help keep us safe, like having an income or whatever it is. But I want to make sure that you're feeling good. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go outside and play? Do you want to, I don't know, write down like ideas of what should be on my resume with like colorful markers? Like, what would feel really good for you to do right now? You can actually have a dialogue with this like young version of you that is the one who's actually been resisting this whole time. And so, in that way, you can actually come up with a totally fun new way of approaching the tasks that you've been dreading, the tasks that you've been avoiding. So just like in that lesson that I was describing with the little girl who she was really scared of holding the bow, like, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was that we did. I think it was like, yeah, seeing her dad do it, holding the bow, and then, like, we did kind of like a party dance or, like, celebrated after he did that and, like, wiggled all around, and then to show her, like, that's how you can celebrate after somebody does something new and is exciting. So then she did, the little bunny ears, which is like the baby version or the early version of holding the bow. And then after she did that, we like did a dance and we celebrated. And she thought that was so much fun. She like giggled and like, you know, had a great time. And then that was the end of the lesson. So, what would the equivalent be for you who is looking to, I don't know, yeah, you're planning your garden for next year and you've like always dreamed of having a garden. You're like, "Oh, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And like, I don't really want to mess it up. And like, it's a lot of energy and resources to pour into this. And like, what if I get it wrong? And then it's all a waste of money. And then like, I'll never want to do it again because I hate myself or something." That's again, that's not uncommon, like, this is so common amongst the clients that I work with to have this kind of, like, a narrative in your head. Where was I going with this? Like, when you decide in collaboration with your inner three-year-old, your inner six-year-old that's, like, terrified of making a mistake, terrified of disappointing others, and also just terrified of the existential unknown that is unknown for all of us because we can't see the future. At least not yet. So, but it's like, what would be the next thing to do that just sounds really fun? And how can we celebrate? Like, how can we just make this a giant playground of taking one tiny little step, just like doing the bunny ears with the bow, and then celebrate the shit out of yourself for doing that and just make it all so much fun. Make it all just the most game fun extra thing ever, and then just feeling so good about the experience of trying new things and being alive and like celebrating yourself for that. That is what I want to invite you into moving forward as a way of working with the parts of you that are resisting. And the reason why this unlocks your next level is because imagine you are driving a car and you're pressing the gas pedal, but then you don't realize that there's like a giant rock sitting on the brake pedal at the same time. And you're pushing, 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 pushing the gas pedal. You're like, why isn't this going anywhere? Completely oblivious to the fact that there's a giant boulder sitting on the brake. This is exactly what it's like when you do not take the time to be there for that young version of you in an agendaless way, to really be curious about their feelings and their emotions, and to just allow the space and time to feel the feeling all the way through, which again, reminder, it only takes 90 seconds physiologically for an emotion to pass through your system. And when you do this work, which again, it's I know because I dreaded this for years of like taking time to do this. And then once I learned how to do this, everything in my life changed. I was able to accomplish the goals in singing that I wanted to. I was able to finally like actually gain traction in my business and start the business that I wanted to. Starting the YouTube channel, that was like the first thing that I did. I was able to, even before that, like I was learning early versions of this, but starting to go for jobs that were like more stereotypical career things. This is like removing the fucking boulder from your brake. Okay. So when you learn to comfort this part of you that desperately needs that acknowledgement, that love, that care, and you say, I'm right here with you, like, I'm going to take care of us, all of us, and you're coming with me on this grand adventure of life. And you get to help me create the most fun, the most loving, the most compassionate way of doing the thing that I know we all want to do, because we all want to flourish. We all want to thrive. We all want to accomplish. Maybe it's the same exact dreams that you did have as a kid. Maybe you always wanted to be an astronaut. I don't know. And you've decided that you're going to do like flight training or something. Like, this could be even the same exact 3-year-old that has these huge dreams of something that you want to do in your life that you're finally acknowledging, but they're also terrified, right? You're by being compassionate with them, you're bringing them along into this future where they get to have everything that they ever wanted. God, just even saying that, I'm like, you're bringing them along into this future where they get to have everything they've ever wanted. How fucking powerful is that? That you, as you are right now, get to be there for that younger version of you and take them along for the ride and show them that life can be so incredible and so amazing, and collaborate on creating it together. This is what will allow you to reach for the highest heights, to become a thought leader, become a politician, become a novelist, like become someone who like starts the first community garden in your town and like feed thousands of people out of your community garden. Like this is the shit that is actually going to make it possible for you to get where you want to go, because you will no longer have your giant boulder on the brake while you're trying to push on the gas pedal. So that is what I'm going to leave you with for today. If you're here and you're like, wow, okay, like this is a whole new way of looking at things, or wow, that really resonated with me, or I'm realizing this, about like what's going on in my own life. Hi, the woos. Good to see you. Um, yeah, removing the boulder with love. Thank you, Kim, for saying that. Yeah, because exactly, forcing it's not about forcing the boulder to like by tearing it away. Like there's a reason why it's there. I know that this kind of breaks down in the brake gas and pedal analogy, because it's like, why would a boulder be on the brake? But in the case of if the boulder on the brake is your young version of you that's freaking the F out about applying for a job, because they're worried that, like, everything's gonna go wrong and they won't be loved. Like, that's valid. Like, that fear is valid, especially for that younger version of you. And so it's all about, like, being there for that part of you and comforting it and just letting the emotions pass through is literally all that's ever needed. You don't need rewards, you don't need punishments, you don't need to, like, brute force remove the boulder, you don't need to brute force, like, make the child hold the bow. I've seen so many parents do that, and it's fucking I just wanna kill them, honestly. When I see parents doing that with their kids, like, literally moving their body to, like, make them do the thing. It's violent, it feels violent, it feels like it's trespassing a boundary to me, and so when we force ourselves to do things that we our younger versions of us are freaking the F out about, it's kind of the same it's the same vibe. So, when you can just be there with that version of you for a little while, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, usually faster once you get the hang of this, you all of that resistance dissolves away, and then you get to collaborate together on whatever it is that you're gonna create next in the future. So, if you are just joining now, I feel like there are a couple people that I've just seen that are joining now. Um, Rewatch this because we went through a whole example of a lesson that I taught to a young child who was like freaking out about learning how to hold the bow. Um, I was a violin teacher, if y'all didn't know that. And why like being there for her and with her was actually like what helped her accomplish learning a new skill in the lesson. And that is exactly how you need to relate to yourself, that part of yourself, when you are resisting going for your own big goals. So please rewatch that if you're joining just now. And I'm going to tell you, we've got some really exciting things that are coming here at Unlearn to Become. I am going to be dropping a really exciting thing. I've been working on this for like probably 3 weeks to a month now at this point. I'm so fucking stoked for it. I cannot wait for you to get your hands on what I'm about to share. It is coming on the 17th. And it is literally what I wish I would have had in my early 20s when I was already burnt out, when I was already like I was at conservatory and I was like just pushing myself. Talk about, "Hi, Missy Mariac, good to see you." Um, it is exactly what I would have wanted when I was that young woman in conservatory slogging through and, like, basically doing exactly what I said, like, is the worst thing to do that we just don't know how to do, which is, like, how to actually be there for that young part of us as opposed to, like, steamrolling over or, like, violently pushing them into doing things that they, actually feel quite uncomfortable to do. Um, so this resource that I'm gonna drop on the 17th is the thing that I wish had existed when I was burnt out at the start of my college years and then proceeded to be burnt out for, like, the next 6, 7 years after that, like, straight up. This is the resource I wish I would have had, and it is going to be here for you to finally turn this all around, all this burnout shit of like pushing yourself to do things in ways that are unsustainable and learning how to make your actions and efforts sustainable, just like what we talked about today. Um, how to like shed your toxic relationships or really question how you're showing up in relationships and the dynamics there so that you get your energy back so that you actually have more energy to do the things that you want to do in your life. Like there's so much in this resource that is coming on the 17th and I cannot wait to tell you all about it and share it with you. It is I'm literally just so excited. So stay tuned for that announcement that is coming at the end of the week. And yeah, and then we're going to be meeting for another live next week and the week after that. This is our new consistent time which is at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 12 p.m. Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific, I think, if you're in the States. So I know many of you are not in the States who watch and follow me along on Instagram. So but that's it for today. Go back and rewatch this if you didn't catch the whole thing. There's so much gold here, and you will be able to apply it to your life in the areas where you are resisting taking action that you know you want to take. And that is ultimately what will get you to the next level of everything that you've ever wanted in life is learning how to comfort this younger part of you. Okay, have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you at the same time, same place next week. And until then, mwah, bye for now.